So in our continuing discussion regarding molecules of living system, today we will take water. Now, as you know, water is one of the most abundant molecule in living system, occupying about 70% weight of almost all forms of cell. Now, life arose in water, and also it evolved in water, particularly the different biomolecules, they evolved in water. So water played a very important role in shaping this course of evolution. Water as a solvent is quite unusual. First of all, it has much higher melting point, boiling point, heat of vaporization, etc., compared to other regular solvents. Now, this unusual property is a consequence of attraction between neighboring water molecules, which gives a significant amount of internal cohesive force in water. Now, this attraction is actually a result of hydrogen bonding between adjacent water molecules. And this hydrogen bonding is in turn the result of the electronic structure of water. Now, if you see this in this figure that the oxygen of water is covalently linked with two hydrogen atoms, and the oxygen is in sp3 hybridized condition. So, the overall shape of the molecule, including the two lone pairs on oxygen, is tetrahedral. Now, oxygen is much more electronegative than hydrogen. Consequently, it pulls the electron pair from both of these oxygen-hydrogen bond towards itself, leaving the hydrogen atoms partially electron deficient and itself becomes partially electron rich. So, the hydrogen acquires delta plus partial positive charge and oxygen acquires delta minus partial positive charge. Consequently, if two adjacent water molecules are aligned in this manner, then this delta plus hydrogen and this delta minus oxygen will attract each other electrostatically. Though this is a weak interaction, but still it's a interaction, and this interaction is called hydrogen bonding. Normally, in liquid water, since the arrangement is tetrahedral, ideally one water molecule should be able to hydrogen bond with four other water molecules, but due to movement of water molecules, this is reduced to 3.4. That is, one water molecule is hydrogen bonded with, on the average, 3.4 other water molecules. Now, hydrogen bonds are relatively weak. At room temperature, the thermal energy of aqueous solution, that is the kinetic energy of motion of the water molecules and all the other atoms and ions and molecules, if they are present, then these are of the same order of magnitude of the hydrogen bond. That is, they can break the hydrogen bond, this thermal motion. Consequently, the hydrogen bonding is not static but is in a dynamic form. Okay, say here three water molecule clusters are shown. Now they are from a hydrogen bonded network. Now within very small time span, about picosecond range, the interaction has changed. So now these water molecules are hydrogen bonded to some other water molecules. Okay. Consequently, this hydrogen bonding network between water molecules, which we can think like a cluster, is actually not a static cluster, but it is termed as a flickering cluster in liquid phase. The water molecules not only forms hydrogen bonded network within other water molecules, but it can do so inside a macromolecule. For example, here microbial ribonuclease is shown, a part of it. You can see in the center there is a water molecule which has hydrogen bonded to three conserved amino acid of this ribonuclease. Now these amino acids in turn have formed hydrogen bond with some other critically positioned amino acid residues. So in this way, this water molecule has formed a hydrogen bonded network, and this is very important to hold the structure in this way and also to the function of the enzyme. This has been found to be the case in many other macromolecules. This is so important that sometimes these amino acid residues are highly conserved, and in all cases a water molecule is found. Now, not only water molecules, but any polar molecule where the hydrogen is attached with a sufficiently electronegative atom, hydrogen bond can form. Here, some common hydrogen bonds that we found in biological systems are shown. For example, where this hydrogen bound with oxygen is the hydrogen donor, then it can form hydrogen bond with a carbonyl oxygen or a amine nitrogen. Similarly, a hydrogen bound with nitrogen can form hydrogen bond with carbonyl oxygen, other oxygen and amines as well. Water can form hydrogen bond with these polar molecules as well. And this is very important because this hydrogen bonding of water with these polar molecules actually results in their high solubility. Here, some important hydrogen bonds formed between biomolecules are shown. These are relevant biologically. A hydrogen bond with water and alcohol. Hydrogen bond between water and ketone. Here, the water oxygen is the hydrogen bond acceptor. Here is this oxygen is the hydrogen donor. This is a very important hydrogen bond between peptide groups. These type of hydrogen bonds, they stabilize polypeptide structure, that is protein structure. It's also important for their function. Now, this is the pattern of hydrogen bond that we see between complementary bases. Okay, and these are the features that stabilize the helical structure of DNA, as we will see later, as well as its function. If the hydrogen bonding groups, that is those that are involved in hydrogen bonding, for example, this donor oxygen, the hydrogen and the acceptor oxygen, if they lie in a straight line, that maximizes the force of hydrogen bond. But if they are not so, then that weakens the hydrogen bond. This we can call directionality. That means hydrogen bond has a directional character. This directionality, it governs the three-dimensional geometry of macromolecules to a large extent. For example, here you see a polypeptide chain is shown in a helical shape. Actually, this is alpha helix. Now, these amino acid residues in the polypeptide chain, they have adopted this pathway because they want to maximize the hydrogen bonding between the different amino acid residues. Okay, they can be maximized if they adopt this helical shape. Similarly, this is a double-stranded helix and these are the bases. Now, these bases, if they want to maximize the hydrogen bonding interaction between them, they have to adopt this double helical pattern. In this way, the directionality governs the macromolecular shape because macromolecules always want to optimize or maximize the hydrogen bonding interactions between the different residues. Now, water is a polar solvent, and we have seen that the polar molecules, they get dissolved in water by virtue of their hydrogen bonding potential. Now, these molecules which dissolve readily in water are called hydrophilic, that is water loving. Now, there are many non-polar molecules that do not have any favorable interaction with water and they are poorly soluble in water. So, they are called hydrophobic. Okay, that means they fear water. But these hydrophobic molecules are readily soluble in non-polar solvents like chloroform and benzene. Now, there are other types of molecules called amphipathic molecules, which are both polar and non-polar part. In this table, some typical biomolecules with varying degree of polarity are shown. The polar groups are shaded in light blue and the non-polar groups are shaded in light yellow. So, these are the polar molecules. You can see that they contain lot of polar groups. So, they are predominantly polar molecules. Now, these are examples of non-polar molecules or predominantly hydrophobic molecules, where you can see that most of the molecule is constituted by non-polar groups. Now, these are amphipathic molecules. That is, they contain both polar as well as non-polar. Here also polar as well as non-polar groups in significant amount. there are many biologically important gases, for example, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, that play major biological role, which are non-polar. And that means they are not that much soluble in water. First of all, in the gas phase, they enjoy a lot of degree of freedom, that is a lot of entropy. So if you put them in the liquid phase, they will lose the entropy. And second of all, they do not have any favorable interaction with water. That's why they are highly insoluble. But the biological system needs to transport these gases because they play a very important biological role. One way to solve this problem is to use water soluble carrier proteins that will bind these insoluble gases and carry them along with them. For example, oxygen is transported in the bound form with the carrier proteins such as hemoglobin and myoglobin. Carbon dioxide, they are poorly soluble, but they form this carbonic acid in water. Now this carbonic acid in turn, they form the bicarbonate ion, and this bicarbonate ion is highly soluble in water. So they can be transported either freely or in the bound form with hemoglobin. There are some other gases like ammonia, nitrous oxide, hydrogen sulfide. They play important biological roles in many different biological systems or organisms. Now these gases, they are polar. Consequently, they are soluble, and not only that, they ionize in water and they can be transported freely through water. What happens if we put a non-polar molecule within water, which is a polar solvent? What happens is that if this is the non-polar molecule, then water molecules, they form a cage-like structure or shell around this non-polar molecule. Now this cage-like structure, it's kind of static. That means the water molecules here, they are not free, they are bound. Consequently, there is a significant loss in entropy, and this decrease in entropy will be proportional to the surface area of the non-polar molecule. More the surface area, more the water will be trapped in this cage. This cage is actually called hydrophobic cage. Amphipathic molecules, since they have a non-polar part as well as a polar part, because of this non-polar part, they also form this cage-like structure if they are put in water. For example, this lipid molecule, it has a polar head group and a non-polar tail. As you can see, water molecule will form a cage-like structure around this tail, around all the molecules. Now, to minimize the loss of entropy, these non-polar tails will cluster, will form an aggregate. Consequently, the surface area of this non-polar part exposed to the water will now be reduced because they have clustered, and more water molecules will be free from the cage. So there is a gain in entropy. This entropy gain can be maximized if they form this type of three-dimensional structures called micelles, where in the core it is occupied by all the clustered non-polar tails, and on the surface you will see the polar head groups. So this all the water molecules previously trapped in the cage are now free. So this type of formation or clustering will regain the entropy loss as much as possible. Now this hydrophobic clustering of these type of molecules, they have a profound biological importance because due to this clustering, lot of important structures are formed within the cell that play very important functions. For example, the lipid bilayer structure of the biological membranes. So these tail part have formed arrangement of lipid bilayer here, where the two tails are facing each other and the polar head groups are on the outside facing the water. So this non-polar part is away from the water, and this sheath-like structure, they form the biological membrane. Proteins can be a part of this type of biological membrane. You can see proteins are here, shown here. Now this is called a transmembrane protein. This is typical because some part of this protein is spanning the non-polar cluster. So this part of the protein is also hydrophobic. And these two ends of the protein which face the water, they are polar. This is a better representation of the same structure where the assembly of the head groups are shown exposed to water. In between the clustered tails, and a transmembrane protein is shown where the hydrophobic part is spanning the nonpolar cluster. Proteins are composed of amino acids, and amino acids can be both polar and nonpolar. Now, this nonpolar or hydrophobic region here are shown in red, and the polar or hydrophilic regions are shown in blue. Now, in absence of water, they have no structure. Okay, so they have no function as well. But if you put this in water, what will happen is that immediately this hydrophobic region will cluster. Okay, and it will give this protein a stable three-dimensional structure. That means this type of hydrophobic interaction is also important for achieving the functional structure of a protein.
Sir, can there be any role of entropy during interaction between polar molecules within water?
Definitely. See, so far we have discussed the role of water driving the interaction of nonpolar molecules, okay? The hydrophobic clustering and so. Interestingly, water also favors the interaction between polar molecules, and that is also driven by entropy. Let us take a classical example of interaction of enzyme and its substrate. So enzyme and its substrate both are soluble molecules within aqueous environment. So they are solvated by water. This solvation is mostly due to hydrogen bonding and some dipole-dipole interaction for both the substrate and the enzyme. So these water molecules that are surrounding these molecules, they are interacting favorably. Okay. Now, when the substrate will bind the enzyme, then this situation happens. The water molecules occupying this area and this area are now released, and that interaction is replaced by various non-covalent interactions between the substrate and the enzyme. So these water molecules that are released, that increases the entropy of the system. So in this way, water and the entropy factor related to water not only favors interaction between nonpolar molecules, also favors interaction between polar molecules. Now, let us take the case of a special type of interaction that can happen within any atoms or groups of or molecules, within water, outside water, wherever. So it happens in all types of molecules and definitely including biomolecules. Let us consider two atoms, the central positively charged nucleus and the electron cloud around it. This electron cloud is not fixed, but they are fluctuating. So at one time it may so happen that in one atom this fluctuating electron cloud is oriented in this way. There is an electron cloud is on this side, but on the other side, due to random fluctuation, the positive part is around this side and the electron cloud is on that side. So this creates a transient dipole where this part is positive and this part is negative. Now if the distance between these two atoms are about 5 nanometer or less, then these two transient dipoles will attract each other, and consequently the distance between the atoms will be reduced. This is called van der Waals interaction. Another name of it is London dispersive force. Now, if we see the energy profile of this interaction, so this is energy and this is this axis is internuclear distance. So when the two atoms are sufficiently apart, then there is no interaction or zero interaction. Now when they are close enough, then there is considerable van der Waals interaction due to the fluctuating electron cloud and transient dipole. Now when they are coming closer to each other, then after a certain point there will be repulsion because the electron clouds will repel each other if they are too close. So beyond this point, repulsive forces predominate. Now this internuclear distance where the attraction is maximum is called van der Waals radius or van der Waals contact distance. This actually is a measure of how close one atom will allow another to approach it. Now, normally, for biologically relevant atoms like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, iodine, etc., this van der Waals radius is of the range 0.1 to 0.2 nanometer.
So, will these water molecules have any influence on the electrostatic interaction in the biomolecules?
That's an interesting question. See, what is electrostatic interaction? If we represent the electrostatic interaction by the symbol F, the force acting between them, whether it is attractive, that is between two oppositely charged ions, or repulsive, that is between two similarly charged ions, it doesn't matter. The electrostatic interaction, the force, if it is represented by F, then F equal to Q1, Q2, Q1 multiplied by Q2 divided by epsilon and R square. Now Q1 and Q2 are the magnitude of the charges of the two ions you are considering. Epsilon is called the dielectric constant. This is dimensionless quantity and roughly it represents the number of dipoles in the solvent. And R is the distance between the two ions. So we can see that this interactive force is inversely proportional to the magnitude of the dielectric constant and the square of the distance between the two ions. That means if we consider the dielectric constant, more the value of the dielectric constant, less will be the electrostatic interaction. Now water at 25 degrees centigrade has this epsilon value of 78.5, which is very high compared to many other solvents. For example, this nonpolar solvent benzene, its epsilon value is only 4.6. Consequently, in water, due to its high electric constant, the interactive force between two ions will be reduced to a large extent. So this means the ionic interactions of biomolecules when they are exposed to water is considerably lessened. Now, there are some critical ionic interactions in macromolecules. For example, interaction of two oppositely charged amino acids within a protein. Now, these play sometimes some critical role in structure and function. Now, to allow this ionic interaction in the three-dimensional structure, these oppositely charged amino acids, they occupy the core part of the protein. They are not exposed outside. So they are in the core part away from the water and thereby they can interact strongly. Now this distance R square with which this force varies inversely also influence the ionic interaction in water medium. Because of this dependence, the electrostatic interaction in water is short range. That is, beyond a certain range, the interaction dies down very quickly because this is inverse square. Normally, the distance for effective electrostatic interaction within aqueous environment is about 10 to 40 nanometer, the range, depending on the electrolyte concentration of the solvent. So for this, what we have seen is water, the universal solvent that is holding the life, all the different biomolecules and cells and organisms. So this has some unusual properties, and that is why it is playing so important role in life. For example, due to hydrogen bonding, water molecules are cohesive, and the hydrogen bonding network is not static but dynamic, this fluctuating cluster. So whatever biomolecular interactions will happen in water will be governed by this, because they will tend to maximize the entropy of the system. That is, they will tend to free more and more water molecules, as we have seen in hydrophobic clustering or interaction between two polar molecules. Everything is governed by this entropy factor of water. We have seen that hydrogen bonding is also enjoyed by all the different polar molecules, and it is a very directional force, and that governs the shape of many macromolecules. We have also seen that there are forces like Van der Waals forces, which does not depend on the type of atom or molecule or the solvent or whatever. They will act anywhere as long as two atoms are close enough with each other. And finally, we have seen that water can also influence the interaction of ions, their electrostatic interaction, by providing a high dielectric constant and thereby dampening the electrostatic interaction. Okay. So in this way, the properties of biomolecules are profoundly influenced by these unusual properties of water.